Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Last Samurai. So, you know what? Like, The Last Samurai is one of those where, like, I don't really realize how amazing it is until I rewatch it again. Like, hands down, has gotta be the best Tom Cruise movie ever. And there's probably a lot more Tom Cruise movies to come at some point. But God, is this movie just so good that it has to just top any freaking Tom Cruise movie? And if I were to ever say, it's like, well, hey, like, yeah, like, there's, like, this is the best Tom Cruise movie. No. The Last Samurai has to be, like, that or around there. Because who knows what Tom Cruise is going to put out next. So, The Last Samurai is easily an epic film. This movie goes on and is to have so many poetic moments, is to have so many little things that are like the best moment of the movie. So it's like there's one moment, but there's a billion of them, and it's just like the whole like Nathan Algren really just kind of being this kind of Captain America like guy who was going through and trying to sell all these Western or Winchester rifles to a number of people. Algren is to go on and at one point tell Bagley that, hey, if you want me to go on and kill certain people, like, I'll do it, but I'll kill you for free. Algren is to have to go on and trying to suppress another civilization, because Algren, of course, was to have to handle Native Americans. Now he's going on and having to handle samurais. And Algren at first is to go on and teach a number of Eastern cultured people to fight with rifles and go on and learn certain strategies and stuff along those lines. And Algren is doing all this with the assistance of a bottle. He is to be a very alcoholic man, and so, because Algren is to have a number of battles and wars and things that he has been in, to the point of all of that haunting him. So, once Algren is to go on and to prove how much so he will take on a number of people at one time and try to hold them off as best as he can, and Katsumoto is to have this dream about this whole white tiger going on and fending off a number of people. That is to start our journey where Katsumoto is like, hey, this guy, do not kill him off. There's something about him. So Algren is to get connected to Katsumoto's culture, as well as getting to know him and having these little small conversations between one another. And Algren is to go on and learn the language, learn the fighting style, and to eventually go on and clean himself up. The moment where Algren in this movie is desperately calling for sake so he can get drunk again, because Algren is to realize he is to be having a number of nightmares where he's screaming and yelling, and like an amazing part of the film where he's like, no, like, I told you, sake. And I'm like, oh my god. Just the brutal, like, yelling of all that And but then on top of that, we have the heartbreaking moments where Algren is to have to go and realize that he's been fighting the wrong side for the longest time, and that Algren is decided to go on and be a samurai, and is to go on and tell Algren how kind she was to him, and so on and so forth. And then it seems we have that heartbreaking moment where Algren is to go off to war to fight along with the samurais. And God, like, there's so many little bits there. There's so many little pieces. And I'm just like, oh my God, this movie. Easily an epic film, currently available on Netflix. If you've never seen it, you need to check it out somehow or another. If it's no longer available on Netflix and you still have never seen it, then see it anyways. It's so good. It's so worth watching. It's so worthwhile. Not only that, but Katsumoto is to mention a part of this film how if you were to go on and like search your whole life to find the perfect bloom of a flower, like it would not be a wasted life. And so Katsumoto is to be a poet and is to be a writer just like Algren is. And so like that's what they kind of can both connect with one another. And so Katsumoto is to understand his enemy. And technically that's what Algren is. And then Algren is to want to do the same thing. But then he realizes, like, well, like, these people are no longer my enemy because I'm going to defend something that I love. And so, yeah. So, beautiful film. Great. Just, speechless how good this film is. So, hopefully, when we actually get the spoilers, I won't be speechless because I need to do this thing called yada yada yada. So hopefully this review won't take forever also, because there's a lot of stuff to just kind of chunk our way through, or chop our way through. And here's the thing, like, this movie is, like, I would expect this movie to be so, like, chop, 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 chop. Like, there'd be so many freaking, like, scenes that you'd have to go on and do and show and whatever. But no, like, it feels like every scene is to have like the perfect amount of time spent for it. And even to the point where we just see that Algren is just defiant. And it's like, no, like you can keep hitting me with a stick. And I'm just going to keep getting back up. And knowing full well that I'm not trained well enough to understand all these attacks. Like at some point Algren is going to learn with trial by fire, which is to basically get beaten the crap out of. But it's also like a possibility that he's also doing that to gain their respect. So yeah, so there's the interesting moments of that, especially that whole wooden stick thing, which I'll probably forget about when we actually get into spoilers, because I'll try to be putting these pieces all together and figuring out all of these scenes. So with that said, let's just go on into spoilers. Let's just kind of break this down as best as I possibly can, because, man, there's a lot of to talk about. So, and more likely, some of the stuff that I've already said is probably something that'll probably get into the spoiler, because I'll probably forget. So, with that said, let's just go into spoilers. I think that I've kind of gone on to everything. It's a must-see kind of movie. If you've never seen it, you need to. So, and some people may hate this film. Some people may say this is like the worst Tom Cruise movie ever. And maybe it's because it's sad. I don't know. But I feel vastly different about this film, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, review's over. I'm not going to go on and do this again. So with that said, let's go into that double 5 time territory, because it's about that customary time yet again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about the time to go spoil this movie. So in the very beginning of this, we of course have Algren, who is to have gone into battles of which of the Native Americans, and so he is to transition on to be this war hero, and we have this Winchester rep who is going on and telling all these people like, hey, like, get ready for the war hero, Captain Nathan Algrim. And everybody's like, okay, where's this guy? The Winchester rep goes in and sees that Algrim is so drunk, and the Winchester rep is going on. It's like, okay, well, you are so fired. So Algrim, realizing that this is his last performance, is to go on and say a number of the speech that, of course, he is to have these cue cards for, and then he is to go on and take this rifle and is to start shooting certain metal pieces and then call it a day. So we have in the audience, we have Zebulon Gant, who is to see this performance and is to be kind of golfers clapping here. And so Gant is to tell Algrim, it's like, well, hey, like, I have a job for you if you're interested, unless you want to become an actor for the rest of your life. And Algrim's like, nope, like, what do you got? So Zeb is to go on and have Algrim meet with Colonel Bagley and Amura, and Amura's bodyguard, of course, which Bagley cannot pronounce this guy's name of. And so they go on and they of course tell Algrim and Gant that they are going to have them go on and pay them, I think, like 400, and Algrim is to say 500, and to just kind of have these guys go on and train their people on their ways. And Algrim is like, I don't know about this. So Algrim is to go on into the bathroom, and Bagley is to follow him in there to eventually persuade him to go on and do this. And so we go on and eventually have Algrim, who is decided to go on and do this thing. And so Algrim is to go on and teach all these people how to shoot. And so it seems that this training is to be very rushed, and Amura is to go on and say, like, well, I think you guys are ready enough to go up against these samurais. And we have Algren, who's like, no, they're not ready. And so they're like, well, we think differently. And Algrim's like, okay, well, Algrim is to put his life on the line and is to tell one of these men to kill him. Having, of course, also, Algrim is with Simon Graham, and it seems that Simon Graham is to have this history of going on and writing people's lies, and is to translate stuff for a number of people, or is to be a translator for anybody who is to not be able to speak certain languages. So Simon is rattling off the things to say to this man that is having his life on the line against Algren. And so Algren is to have this pistol and is trying to just kind of slowly but surely, like, hey, shoot me, shoot me. So it seems when the guy finally does put ammo in his gun and fires, doesn't hit Algren. So Algren goes on to look at these guys and like, yeah, they're not ready. Yeah, they don't care anyways. So they just think that possible firepower is going to get them through this battle. So we have Algren, we have Gant. or Gaunt. I don't know. I don't know the way of which to. His name seems to usually be Zeb. When he dies, Zeb sadly is to be called Zeb. So Algren is to get everybody together, is to get them into war, and so the samurais are coming in, and they are just very intimidating, and they just start slicing and dicing through all these people. As well as we have in the very beginning of this film, we had Katsumoto, who has that dream about the white tiger going on and scaring away a number of these men. Katsumoto is to eventually see that dream realized. So Algrim is to see his friend Zeb getting killed here, and so Algrim is to get knocked off his horse and is to continue on going through all these samurai and doing a pretty decent job at trying to take them all down. So we go on here and we, of course, have a certain samurai that is to, of course, be coming up here that is to be wearing the red samurai gear that, of course, Nathan will be wearing later on in the film. Nathan Algren. So, and when this guy is to go on and try to kill Algren, Algren is to take this this spear and shove this in this guy's throat, and is continuing to fend these characters off. Katsumoto is to realize that Algren is to have this spear that has this white tiger on it, and Katsumoto is realizing that his dream is now realized, and so he's like, take him away. So Katsumoto is to now be a prisoner for Algren, and Algren is to come here and ask Katsumoto, it's like, why am I a prisoner here? Like, what do you want from me? And Katsumoto is like, well, I want to know my enemies. And like the very first time they ever talked, they just wanted to, like, Katsumoto just wanted to know what Algrim's name was. And then once he knows that, he just like dismisses him. And then so the more and more Algren is to be here, he's like, why am I here? Like, why didn't you just kill me off? Like, why am I talking to you right now? And so Katsumoto wants to understand his enemy and wants to go on and like have this guy like understand them as well as they understand him. So we have Algrim, who is to be put into Taka's house, and so as well as Taka being there, we also have Nobutada, who of course is actually Katsumoto's son. And so Algren is to go on and is to eventually like have Taka kind of sew up his wounds, and is to eventually go on and ask for Saki, and Naputada is saying, oh my god, he said Saki? Like, so the guy is to start to drink heavily, and Taka is to tell Nobutada that she no longer wants this guy to drink. There's no more drinking in this house. And Nobutada is like, well, hey, like really? Like this? And so Taka's like, well, yeah. So that's when we start, of course, getting Nathan or Algren to... I'm going to keep calling him Nathan for the rest of this review now. It's a lot easier. Because there's a lot of other movies or a lot of other names that I'm probably going to be butchering here. So, like, gear up for that. So Nathan, of course, is screaming for Saki, screaming no, screaming I told you, And so then after that, it seems that Nathan is to go on and then sober up after he is to have all these nightmares. And so Nathan is to go on and see that there's two kids playing with sticks. And so we have Nathan that goes on and is to start playing around with this one kid that is to have this stick, which we also have it where Algrim, Bagley, and Simon Graham were also to all meet with the Emperor and were to talk to him about what they're going to go on and do. And it seems like the Emperor is to be like, he's kind of playing like two sides of the sword here, where he also respects the samurais and he doesn't want to go on and like tell them to like stop what they're doing, but he also has Amura who is to also like want what he wants and is to like put a law that these guys can't be holding swords anymore. And so like the Emperor is just caught in the middle. And so like both of these factions are just fighting it out because the Emperor just can't decide. So we have it where, like I said, Nathan is to see these two kids playing with these sword sticks, and that all of a sudden is having it where Ugio, of course, the guy that probably everybody knows from like Avengers Endgame is the guy who was to like fight Hawkeye, or he was also the guy in the Wolverine as the dad of the woman that eventually Wolverine fell in love with. What are you? I'm the Wolverine. Sling. Anyways, so Eugeo was to go on and like kind of even things up, and so Nathan is to grab the sword with one hand, and if anybody is to go on and of course even see like the Wolverine, like a samurai sword you grab with two hands, and so but Nathan is just using the one, just to like think that if he uses one he'll be faster. So Nathan is going on and trying to like defend these attacks, and Eugeo is to consistently like one way or the other just knock this guy down, and when he gets back up he smacks him back down again, and to the point where Nathan's nose is bleeding and he's still gonna try and get up. And so Eugeo just goes on and just like, when he just cleans this guy's clock, takes a wooden sword, chucks it back at the kid, and is to walk off. But eventually we have it where, of course, Nathan is going to go on and learn the ways of how they fight, and is to try to figure out how to go on and beat Eugeo, or to just get into some point of a tie towards the later part of this movie. So we go on, and Nathan is to start learning the language slowly but surely. I think the first thing that he asks for is more rice, and of course we have Nabu Tada, who is going, oh my god, like he's asking for more rice. Like, what else does he know? And so the more and more we go on, and like everybody gets to start learning one another's names, everyone, like we have Nathan who's starting to learn how to like say fire, or how to say cold, or how to like start to say a number of things, and it's kind of really fascinating. So we go on, and Nathan is to eventually get to the point later on in this film where uh, Katsumoto is to go back and speak with the emperor, and this is right around the time where like swords are legal, and they also want to like figure out how to go on and just trying to humiliate certain samurai members. And so we have Katsumoto who's speaking with the emperor and saying like, well, hey, like if like I like am to be like of any like if any like enemy of yours like tell me and I'll kill myself right now. And the emperor's like, no, like don't go on and do that. So because we find out that Katsumoto is actually the emperor's teacher, and the emperor is asking Katsumoto, it's like, well, like, what do you want me to do, teacher? And he's like, no, like, I can't, like, no, like, I can't tell you that. Like, you're basically like a god to a lot of us, and I can't just go on and tell God what to do. So we have it where when finally Algren is to come back, he is to go on and get all the back pay from him being captured, and Bagley is to go on and is to tell him it's like, well, hey, like this is enough money here to give you an out to just bury your face into a bottle for the rest of your life if that's what you want to do. And we have Nathan, of course, that is to go on and like has written a Japanese symbol. And Bagley is asking Nathan, it's like, why do you hate your own people so much? And Nathan is to take the little scribble of something from him and is to like not really say anything. So, but let's also get something else. Like, I'm going to keep coming back to some possible early things of this movie. So, there is the one scene where Nathan is to go on and like have his muddy boots coming into the house, and we have it where Taka is to realize like, oh my god, like this guy is bringing in muddy boots into my house. As well as she also is like, god, this guy smells, like can't he just like bathe or something? So and that's when eventually Nathan is to try out a new pair of clothes, because he's like, well, yeah, like I want to go on and like finally get like a new pair of clothes because I'm just wearing the same thing every single day. To the point also where like the silent guide that is to watch over him, like he never really knows what this guy's name is, and so he keeps going on and like calling him Bob, like, hey, you ladies man Bob, and this and that, just like insulting the guy. But I'm assuming at some point uh when we have it where Nathan is to learn the language, maybe he is to talk to this guy at some point. But yeah, like, but Nathan also like ridicules Bob for not protecting him from before when he was getting his butt kicked, because technically this guy is to protect Nathan here, and we see that towards the end of the movie that he goes on and does that. So we go on and are back to the point where there is to be Amura and a number of people that all want all the samurais to have swords in this film, and it's a law. So we have, of course, Nobutada, who is to be in the street, and there's a number of soldiers like seeing that he has swords, and so they're saying like, well, hey, like it seems that we need to give this guy a haircut. And so all these soldiers are ready to fire. Nathan is telling them like, hey, no, like do not go on and do this. So they take his swords and then they cut his hair. And so we have it, of course, where we have Katsumoto that's with Amura, and he's with the Emperor at this council meeting, and he's like, well, hey, like, it's great to be like back with the council. And Amura's like, well, yeah, but you still have your swords, so like, if you don't give up your swords, like, in a place that is well protected, then like, we're gonna have to go on and we're gonna have to arrest you. And so Katsumoto is trying to give this sword to the Emperor, and the Emperor won't take it. So Katsumoto is to go on, and he's to get arrested. And so Algren is decided, like, well, like, we're gonna try to bust him out. Like, we're gonna go on and we're gonna try to bust him out here because, like, we think what's going on isn't right. And I think I'm like skipping a huge chunk of this film, but I think there's also like so much to talk about in this film, and eventually there's going to be a number of things that I'm probably going to remember at the last minute here. Um, and so, but there's also like just a lot of battling and a lot of fighting in this movie also. And so with that, like, I think there's just like a lot of time just eaten up by just a number of battles in this movie. So that might be why, like, I can probably rattle off this movie fairly quickly. Not quite sure. Let me know in the comments below if there's a number of things that I've forgotten about, because I'm sure there is. There might be your favorite moment that I completely forgot about within this movie, because there's a lot of stuff to just trickle down. So with that said, Nathan. Nathan is to trying to get to Kasamoto, and Amura is to tell his bodyguard to follow Nathan to see if he's going to go on and try to protect Katsumoto. And that's exactly what he does. So Nathan is to go with Graham to have Graham persuade these guards to let him in this room and basically say whatever he needs to say to have them go on and uh, believe believe these characters. So we go on here, and so Simon or Graham is to mention that Nathan is the president of the United States and he wants a picture with Katsumoto. And Nathan is telling Simon, it's like, seriously, you told them that I'm the president of the United States. He's like, well, like, I'm sorry, like, I just feel sick and I just had to say something. So Nathan is to go on and have these guys believe them. And so now Nathan is to convince Katsumoto to like escape. That's like, hey, we need, like, I was wanting to kind of figure out some way to convince you to escape here, and here I am. So Katsumoto decides to escape with a number of his people, and we have a bunch of these bow and arrows going against these riflemen, and like, we have it here where, of course, Nabutata is to then get rid of the bullets and to fall on this bridge. Nathan is to scramble to get him, and then he is assigned to go on by his own and like, give these guys some time to run off, as he's going to go on and use all of his bows and arrows left, and is to go on and start like swinging with two swords to try and give these guys more time. We also had the one scene in this movie also where we had it to where there was a number of men who look like ninjas who are making their way through Katsumoto's town, and they were trying to ambush and try to get to Katsumoto. And Nathan had this suspicion, or had this like thought that like, something doesn't feel right, as Katsumoto is going on and doing this little play for all these little kids and women and everybody in the town. And he's doing this little fun, goofy little play, and all of a sudden Nathan is screaming for Katsumoto, and Katsumoto has realized exactly what's going on. And so it seems that at the right time, Katsumoto was to move for this other actor to get jabbed in the freaking neck with this crossbow. And now they had to go through and slice and dice through all of these ninjas and defend their town. And I thought that was a pretty cool scene, also. And that also, like, at that point, we had like Nathan and Taka were doing some really cool things together, where she was going on and like slicing through some of these people, and Nathan was using these chairs to defend himself because he still didn't have a sword at that time. So we have it where Katsumoto and Nathan are making it back to the town, to their place. And Katsumoto is to mention that, like, out of all the ancestors, he feels that he has failed all of them, and that he feels that he is just going to go on and, like, die or should end his life. And Nathan's like, well, like, why do that now? Why not go on and do it in a battle? And Katsumoto is like, well, hey, like, we don't have the numbers that Amaro is to have. And Nathan's like, that doesn't matter. Like, because Nathan was to tell Katsumoto about this battle, I think between like 500 men against 2,000, and then was to go on and talk about this other battle that had like 1,000,000 men against like a very small portion. I don't remember what the ratio was, but somehow or another, they somehow got that small portion of people were to go against those 1,000,000 men, and were to somehow be able to make those guys like lose the taste for battle. And Nathan is going on and thinking like, maybe we can accomplish that scenario. Maybe somehow like we can trick these men into losing the taste for battle. And so Katsumoto's like, oh, okay, all right, like, this seems reasonable. So we go on, and we now have to, like, I'm hoping that I've kind of covered at some point or another, like, as much as I can possibly cover through this. And I feel like I've left a bajillion things out. But hopefully, in a roundabout way, covered most of this movie for the most point. There was the one moment also where Nathan was to try to show the kids like baseball, and like he was to try to like run around the bases after he hit it, and the kids are chasing after him, and he's like, no, you have to go on, you have to like go after the ball, not after me, go after the ball. And so the kids didn't figure out how to play baseball, so they're like, like, let's just tackle him, that's fun. So yeah, like, that was like a fun little piece in here. But yeah, so we go on, and Nathan is to get ready for war. And so he's to tell, like, Taka that he has to go on and he has to go off to war because they're going to kill everything that he loves. We also had, like, Katsumoto with this poem that he doesn't know how to finish. And Katsumoto was talking about that. Nathan's like, well, like, what's it all about? Like how exactly can you like come up with something? Because Nathan, of course, was also a writer, but Nathan was to say like, oh no, I'm not a writer. And Katsumoto was like, well, Taka says that you've written every single day, so you are one. To the point where at the end of this movie, Algrim is to chuck these books at Graham and tell him like, hey, like, use that for your book, for this story. So Nathan is to go on and is to tell this family that he's getting ready for battle, and of course the son, who I believe is Hygin, hoping I'm pronouncing that somewhere correctly. He's upset because, of course, like not only his father was to die, and like Algrim is like, well, I'm responsible for that, and he's like, well, he's also just angry that you're going to leave us also. So Algren has to go on and try to comfort this kid, and is to mention that he was always afraid during battle, and even though that he's fought so many things. So the one guy is telling him that they're coming, and so now Algren is to have like Taka come to this room and say like, hey, if you put on this honor, you're gonna honor our family. So he's like, okay, well, like, put it on. So they put on the armor, and we have the moment where like Taka is just on um, Algren's shoulder, and I was like, man, like, how is it that throughout this movie we never see them like kissing or anything like that? Like, there's moments where, of course, Algren would go on and see like Taka like going and cleaning herself or something close to that. But like we always have like Algren who just kind of looks away in respect. Um, or to see her at one point like adjusting her robe, and he just kind of looks off. He's like, like, like no, I'm just gonna try to respect her. So we also had the one moment where like Taka was going on and like trying to do all these like cleaning and chores and whatever, and we have it where like Algren was like grabbing one of these things, like trying to help her, and she's like, well, hey, like Japanese men don't go on and help like this. And Algren's like, well, I'm not a Japanese man, so like I can do whatever I want. I don't care. Like if it seems like you're struggling with something, I'm going to help out. So we go on, and so Nathan is to put on this armor, and so the very first guy that he sees, of course, is a guy that I have difficulty pronouncing. Unjio is to see this guy's armor, and he's to like grab it, and he's like, all right, like getting ready for battle. So Katsumoto, of course, is to make this specific sword for Nathan, and I'm assuming that that sword is to possibly be the last bit of Katsumoto's little poem, possibly. So Nathan goes on and is to have Katsumoto like get everybody geared up for this battle. And so now we go on into the battle with Bagley and Umura all out there getting ready to present their men. So what happens first is we have Nathan and Katsumoto who are to just kind of let these cannons fly, and we have it to where like all the guys are to take these horses and are to burn these little things to have everybody just run away. And so they're like, aha, like we've got them on the run already. So Amura is going on and saying like, well, hey, like how about we just go on and just send everybody, just wipe them all out. And Bagley's like, I don't think so. Like, I think we should just wait a minute. And he's like, nope, send everybody. We're going to wipe them all out. So they send everybody, and so that's when these guys are to get a full advantage and start killing all of these men off. And so because they have this thing set up to where they can have this kind of like areas where they're kind of set on fire, and also like these character, like all these guys are all the enemies are to be caught off guard, and so the samurai just start going through, and yeah, like the soldier guys do go on and start shooting up a number of these people. and even the guy who's to protect Nathan is to also get shot, like kind of like like jumping over to like prevent Nathan from getting shot here, and to go on and try to continue to kill people until he dies. So they go through and they're like slicing and dicing through everybody as much as they possibly can. And after they get through all of those men, Nathan is to now tell Katsumoto that like there's no way that they're going to be able to get through all the other people. And it's like, well, hey, like we're going to like we're going to do this anyways. We're just going to ride into this with our horses and we're just going to do it. Even though guaranteeing that we're going to die, we're going to do this. It's just the honorable way. Because the very first thing that they say in this movie is all about like the one thing that you can probably forget is just honor. So they go on and they get these horses and they're like riding like crazy. Like, yeah, we're gonna get these guys. We don't care. we're just gonna figure out a way to beat them, just where like their spirit is crushed. Like that will be a victory for us. So Amura's like, oh my god, like how are these guys still coming? Shouldn't they be dead at this point? And so Bagley is going on of like, get my horse, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna see this through. So that's of course when Nathan and everybody get in their horses, and Nathan is to go on and take his sword and chuck it and hit Bagley right in the chest, and he dies, and he's like, bah, he's dead. It's great. So they go through and they run through everybody that's left from that part of things. But there's like a number of cannons. There's a number of just like there's this big massive machine gun like firearm that like blasts through most of these characters here. And so the only two that are really left are Nathan and Katsumoto. And at that point, we just have the other army that is like bowing in respect of these samurais, and they will not go on and shoot anymore. As Amura is to want to kill them, they're like, no, we're not going to do that. We also had the one previous General Hasegawa, who used to be a samurai, and because he could not go on and fight the samurais, he decided to take a sword to his chest, as we had Katsumoto lob off his chest, or lob off his head. And Nathan is to go on and not understand what any of that was, and so Nathan had to get an explanation from Katsumoto what exactly that ritual things was. How this guy wanted to wanted to die, and Katsumoto needed to help him. So, but now back towards the end of this film, where we have that same thing, where Nathan is to have Katsumoto like give up this sword to him, and Katsumoto is like kind of bleeding all over, and he's like, okay, well, I think it's about time for you to just stab into me to kill me off. And Nathan's like, well, okay, like I loved our conversations that we had together. And so Nathan kills Katsumoto, and all the other soldiers are bowing. And so then we go on and we have the Emperor, who is to be talking to the American ambassador, the guy who I believe is Ambassador Swadbeck, who is actually played by Scott Wilson, who a lot of people probably know from Walking Dead. It's Herschel. So we have this ambassador coming in and wanting to sign this treaty with Japan. And so while that's going on and Amura is with the Emperor, we have Nathan who's coming in desperately still wanting to give this sword to the Emperor because this is Katsumoto's sword. And Katsumoto with his dying breath wanted the emperor to have this sword from his ancestors, and that like he had defended him like with this sword, and the emperor is to want to take this sword and is to tell Amura, it's like, hey dude, your days of telling me what to do are done. Like, I'm gonna go and take everything that I've ever given you and give it away as a gift to the people. And the emperor is also to tell this ambassador, it's like, well, hey, you can take your offer, you can take your treaty, you can take whatever, you can just shove it. So the emperor is going to Nathan and is telling him, like, hey, how did Katsumoto die? And Nathan's like, well, I'll tell you how he lived. It's like, yeah, like that's always like, I think that's like Brian's song also, where at the end where the guy who's Brian is to die, it's like, well, hey, I'm not going to tell you how he died. I'm going to tell you how he lived. That's always the way of which to approach things. So now we have it to where Graham is to speculate what happened with Nathan. A lot of people, I guess, were to say that he was to go back to America. A lot of people were to say a number of things. But at the end of all this, we have it to where Nathan is to go on and go back to that place and is to live the rest of his life with those people and make the best of it. So, with that said, I think that does luckily cover this movie. I thought it was going to take like at least like an hour and a half. Or I thought it was going to be like, man, this is probably going to take 2 hours to all talk about. But like, I also had to go back to things because I was like, okay, I didn't cover this, or I didn't cover that. But yeah, I feel that a good portion of this movie is at least covered. There's a lot of stuff where I didn't go in and talk about when Graham was asking Nathan about like the whole scalping thing, and we of course have Nathan who describes it about like pulling a person's hair and eventually becoming bald at some point. So and going on and having Nathan like mention all of the battle of which that he had fought with the Native Americans. And so like even the emperor was kind of asking Nathan, it's like, well, like do they really have like the feathers and like all those things that like people have written about, and like what are they really like? And so like we had Nathan of course answer that for the emperor. So yeah, other than that, I feel, oh, there's actually also the one spot where Nathan, when he was to make his way to Katsumoto, he had to go on and fight 3 guys without anything. Like, he didn't have a pistol, he didn't have anything. These 3 guys were coming at him, and so he decided to grab this sword from the one guy to defend from the 2 others, and he figured a way to slice through all these men, and he got to the bodyguard and he chopped this guy's head off. And then we had to like replay it in slow motion, how this all battle was to go off and how he was sliced through all these guys, and like how we just had Nathan, who I guess was just relishing in that moment of taking down all these men simultaneously at the same time, because he was to know and like kind of like realize where these strikes were coming at. And so yeah, other than that, yeah, I think everything else was covered, because there's too many great moments in this movie. There really is, and I'm sure I skipped a billion of them. So with that said, I'm gonna finally just get out of here feeling okay at the end of the day of how I was to go on and approach all this. Plus, I also want to get out of here before I have to go on and refuse clips and whatever together, so I'm going to try to avoid that also. So let me know in the comments below how you felt about The Last Samurai, and I'm going to get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.